welcome the panelists. Give a round of applause for Ernest Toney, the founder of BIPOC Can.
For attending today's panel. We're excited to kick off this conversation. We're going to talk about translating social equity policy into action. I'd like to introduce the panelists. We have Rachel Artenoy, cannabis business attorney from RZA Legal. We have L'Oreal Allegrete, CEO of 40 Tons. Oh, wherever. Come on by. Yeah. Wherever sounds good. And Belisha Royster, the founder and chief empowerment officer at the Social Equity Empowerment Network.
One. Okay, here.
All right, thanks everybody. This is, over the past couple of years, the conversations around social equity have been the forefront of the cannabis industry. And, we've seen a lot of policies that have had good intentions, but they have not followed through the way that we would have hoped. So I think also within the industry, we've seen a lot of lip service given to social equity, but how do we translate those ideas into action? So I want to start by just asking, how do we ensure that people in communities most harmed by the drug war can enter the cannabis industry and realize its economic opportunities? Maybe, Belisha, could you start by telling us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, we need to start expanding the conversation beyond licensing and making sure that we're looking at this as a holistic opportunity. And there's so many ancillary opportunities. There's so many different pathways. There's so many opportunities for you to take your current skill set and infuse that into the market or the industry. And there's also opportunities for us as business owners and as organizations to create pathways by way of procurement, contracting, as well as just making sure holistically as companies and as business owners and as trailblazers in the industry, we are providing pathways to the industry outside of just consumer base.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Any other comments that you two have?
Yes, well, first of all, I wanted to thank you, Ernest, for being the moderator here, and I wanted to thank the people in the audience for taking the time out of this conference. You could be anywhere, but you chose to be here to support and to listen to what we had to say, so thank you. And to the women who paved the way for us to be sitting right here, your Khadijah Tribbles, your Gia Morans, thank those women first.
Absolutely.
So to answer that question, or to add what you were saying, Belisha, is that for 40 Tons, we are able to see that need in the community and actually take action. And what I mean by that is we have hosted career conferences for the people who are affected from the war on drugs, right? We're giving them opportunity and education, and those two components is what's really needed to help the community.
Yeah. I didn't sort of share where each of our panelists are from, but Belisha's from Chicago. L'Oreal is in California, and Rachel is in Colorado. So all coming from markets that have established social equity programs. So they've been doing the work on the ground to try to make some improvements. Rachel, could you tell me a little bit about how you are working to bridge policy gaps to ensure that communities can access this industry?
Yeah, I think to piggyback off what Belisha said, there are a lot of creative ways to do it. With my firm, I started off by providing free legal services to social equity applicants because that was what I identified as one of the barriers to entry. And that translated into becoming a bigger program through our state bar association, which provides pro bono legal services, which is, again, a big barrier to entry. But I think that there are a lot of other measures in between that help get folks there. And one of them, for instance, in Colorado, we see a fund that was created that came just from Colorado marijuana tax money but it's available not just for marijuana companies. So like you said, it's being creative and including folks in the supply chain outside of just licensing, right? So it's to say, we care about and we recognize the harms that the war on drugs caused. We're going to put together a fund that's not just going to be dedicated to a marijuana licensed entity, but to another business that you might be better at starting and getting off the ground that has nothing to do with cannabis. So I think that there's a few different ways to sort of bridge that gap. And really, from my perspective, working with small independent cannabis businesses is looking at what are those barriers to entry and how can we provide the services or resources and not just dollars, right? I may not have dollars through my little law firm, my small women-owned law firm, but I have my time and I have my resources that I can provide. So it's figuring out where those gaps are and having creative solutions to fill those gaps, I think has been the biggest.
Okay. Yeah, and what are you seeing out there so Chicago, Illinois has had some challenges over the past couple of years. So what's working for you? How are you bridging some of those gaps for your members, for your community?
Absolutely. So Social Equity Empowerment Network, also known as SEEN, is a trade association built to exactly do that, to basically bridge the gap and create pathways. We're also trying to bridge the legacy market into the legal as we create these lanes. We have a special program that we're working on, which is a hub for brands. And so that is a branding hub that we're putting together to allow people that may not have had the opportunity to get a license or are fortunate enough to get a license, but they actually have a product, a brand, something tangible, where we will help you and garner everything along the way. Partnering with people like yourself, getting them the legal expertise, the accounting expertise, and all the things that they need to learn in order to get their product from the streets to the shelves. And so that's one of the huge products that we're working on at SEEN. And building those kind of opportunities are pivotal in making sure that the people that deserve to benefit from this industry actually do. The reality of it is that most of the states are very competitive. They're only giving out a few licenses. So you have to look at this as a holistic opportunity. How can you penetrate this market as a social equity applicant, as a person from a DIA, a disenfranchised area? The people that actually were harmed by the war on drugs, how can we make sure and ensure that they benefit from it? And we do that by education, like you spoke about, providing education, providing a holistic approach. What can I do as far as a skill set to be relevant in this space, as well as realizing that as business owners, we need to diversify our contracting. I think that as companies, we need to take a holistic approach and just look at how diverse our employment base, and everything. And there's so many different ways that we can look at this holistically and comprehensively to make sure that we're doing our part as business owners to have a diverse industry. And so those are just some of the things that we're doing, bridging the gap with a lot of contractors and the industry as well as brands.
Okay, and L'Oreal, could you maybe chat also about, what success looks like for you, how you're working on bridging some of those gaps to the services that you offer?
Yeah, sure. With 40 Tons, we've been able to be very nimble, and we are the culture. And we have strategic partnerships throughout retail, distro, manufacturing partners that we're able to be looked upon as we are boots on the ground doing the work, and we are well respected in the industry by larger MSOs that want to partner with brands like us because we are doing the work.
Yeah, so to that point, what you just said, being boots on the ground, a lot of times when I think about the conversations with regard to social equity over the past few years, when we look at the intentions of policy, a lot of times there's a gap. Policy gets passed. In some cases, maybe somebody's able to be in a position to apply for a license, but then we have some gaps after you. If you are successful and able to actually get yourself into the industry, can you tell me a little bit about when you have those boots on the ground, when you have organizations that understand the pulse of the community and understand the needs of the social equity applicants and operators, where would somebody get started? You know, if there's a company that wants to actually have, to put a program into action, like what could they do?
Call me.
Go, call you? No.
I mean, ultimately, it's about community. It's about culture. It's about connecting to the people that you actually want to reach. And so ultimately, a lot of CEOs don't understand what the workers are going through because they're in a CEO boardroom. So sometimes when you come out of that corporate mentality and realize that this particular industry is very unique in the way that it's connected, interconnected, in fact, with culture, with community. And so that is woven, you know, and embedded in the seams of cannabis and weed or whatever you call it across this universe. And so ultimately, if you have a corporation or you have a cannabis business, it inevitably cannot be successful if you do not engage the community and the culture. And I think ultimately, even corporations are looking at this in a different lens now because they recognize that as we try to penetrate the legacy market, that it just doesn't happen. It doesn't translate well unless you engage the community. That's the missing piece. And so ultimately, to be successful in this particular industry, cannabis is community. And so I think the boots on the ground is exactly the recipe. Engaging with organizations like SEEN, like 40 Tons, the people that are actually doing the work, the people that actually have those relationships, those proven relationships, those trusted relationships with the community, and have the ability also to take that, to bridge that gap from the community to corporate cannabis or what this industry is developing into is pivotal.
Yeah, and that's exactly what 40 Tons has done and will continue to do. We have a prisoner give back program on our website. We are advocating for over a dozen nonviolent cannabis offenders, and I am so excited and thrilled to make this umpteen announcement, if you haven't heard already, but one of our persons that we were advocating for is Luke Scarmazzo. He did almost 15 years in prison for a nonviolent cannabis offense, and he's actually here today in the audience. So this is a testament. This is a testament of the work that 40 Tons is doing and all of our strategic partnerships that have aligned our missions with theirs, and we're able to have a success like Luke Scarmazzo. And of course, our other co-founder, Corvain Cooper, who was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for a nonviolent cannabis offense. So doing the work, having companies, organizations align with our goals is very important. And we are the culture, and most cannabis brands, they want to be a part of that. You know, they want our dollars, and why not make them work for our dollars?
Yes. Hey, you know, congratulations on the work that you have done. That's awesome to hear that he's here this weekend. You know, and when you, so you know, I heard another word that that stuck out in my mind. You were talking about strategic partnerships. Mm-hmm. You were talking about, you know, boots on the grounds, the community, the culture. A lot of that is education, insight, but also relationships.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think so often it's important to leverage those relationships to uplift, you know, people that are trying to have a chance to enter, build, grow their businesses here. Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've been able to do, like, you know, getting Colorado's first social equity hospitality license, for example, approved, in the advocacy that you did and are doing to continue that work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it does start with relationships, but how do you start with relationships? It's action. You have to take action to build relationships in the first place. It's coming to events like this, where you have to act to meet people. And so just like putting, you know, the steps that I've taken to translate policy into action is testifying on bills. It is, you know, I'm a member of the social equity policy work group for the Marijuana Enforcement Division in Colorado, telling them what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And in being part of those meetings, you don't get paid for it. It's the action. It's the time and action and boots on the ground that you have to put in. But believe it or not, regulators and you know, politicians, they don't hear a lot from folks on cannabis. There are so many bigger fish to fry in their eyes when it comes to, especially local governments, where it's like, you know, we have to deal with the welfare and safety of our folks, as well as creating an entirely new industry that folks say they want, right? Or that the voters have voted in. So it's, you know, putting in that time, doing the action, and even if that action is writing an email to your legislators saying, this is very important to me, That in and of itself is what's going to move this policy forward because, you know, like Ernest said, there's a large gap between policy and reality sometimes. And even the best laid plans, especially with social equity incentive programs in the states, they don't know if this works. They have to write it up and then see how it plays out. And then they realize these are the gaps, these are where the regulations aren't covering, or these are how our programs are being exploited. How do we fix that? And so in Colorado, we've had a lot of work to have to catch up to. And things are constantly changing, and they're still changing, even this session right now, pretty contentiously. But then we're seeing other markets like New Jersey, New York, the East Coast, where they're baking it into their programs, but they still don't really know how that's going to shake out. And I think, you know, it's important that we're putting these things on paper, but it's more important to see how they're playing out and then being loud about what's working and what's not working.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a great point. And also, you know, because we have so many other markets that are coming online that, and in some cases, they're not even, you know, these new markets are starting and they don't have social equity programs included. But for the ones that are moving forward, you know, what are some considerations? Like, what does an equitable industry look like? You know, what type of advice would you share, you know, for some of the new markets that are coming online to actually help to more than policy, action, right? What do you got for me, Felicia?
I would say ownership. I mean, ultimately, when you think about equity, equity is different from equality. So with equality, you're setting an equal playing field, but with equity, you're providing the tools that one needs in order to actually achieve that success in that position. And I think that looking at this as a holistic, without building a program, without actually having funds to properly fund some of these businesses, having grants opportunities, having actual procurement set up where actually there's an ecosystem that is actually in place, and that the businesses actually must purchase from the smaller businesses in order for them to be successful. We see a lot of situations where corporate cannabis is freezing smaller independent businesses out because they're not purchasing or they're not supplying them if they are the cultivators. So having a structure that disallows a situation where you create a program ultimately for it to fail, because it's okay to say the buzzword of social equity, but then without putting all the pieces to the puzzle together for it to actually be achievable, operational, and successful is exactly that, a buzzword. So I think that looking at this from a standpoint of there are technical support opportunities for many states. There are financial opportunities for many states. There are also financial and technical opportunities for business owners and some of the mature business operators that are in the States. There's opportunities for mentorship, such as what we've put together here. And so I think ultimately, if we do want to see this equitable, if we do want to see this diverse, we need to do our part as small business owners, as well as corporations in this space, as well as regulators, to make sure that we're creating an ecosystem that feeds everyone. There's a gray area. There's a black market, whatever you call it. There's a whole gray area that's not being penetrated because there's no ownership diversity. So I know that me owning a dispensary, my friends would definitely be there. And so I think ultimately, if we look at this holistically and approach this with a diverse lens, we'd have that equitable solution to policy.
Yeah, I think to add on this social equity and all of the gray area, if you will, of what that looks like, what it doesn't look like, how to put this into action, how to move forward, how to make, business work for you. For us, with 40 tons, we've been able to have these strategic partnerships, have impact, do community great work, also make a profit with our CBG line, and we've had to carve out our own path, not going the social equity route and getting a license, although that will be needed. It's a great benefit, but at this point, 40 Tons has been able to be nimble and operate without a license, and we had to carve our own path out. We had to make our own way and go through the social equity or over that hump so that we are being seen for what we're doing and the good works that we will continue to do.
All right. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Our time is up. Obviously, this is an important conversation, and I know we didn't get through all of the potential things that we can do to take action. But if you are around for the rest of the conference, stop by the Social Equity Lounge on the on the second floor. We'll be there to answer some questions, try to provide any type of assistance and guidance that you need over the next 2 days. So thank you.
Thank you. I think they were.